That's it, folks. We are here in hour 2 of Fantasy in Frames Wednesday. This is Shoot the Gap, the IDP Fantasy Football Podcast here at Fantasy in Frames. I'm your host, Jorge Edwards. I got Justin Taylor here with me. JT, we got a very, very special episode here on Shoot the Gap. You and I, we just finished up our 3-part series talking about the IDP relevant rookie prospects in college football the past 3 weeks. And who better than an actual NFL prospect to grace us with his presence here to talk about what it's like actually getting ready to, prepare for the NFL draft, his experiences playing college football, whether or not he's a fan of fantasy football and whether or not we can convert him to being an IDP fantasy football fan. Of course, I'm talking about Dorian Davis, defensive back from Austin P. So before we get into all that and bring him on screen, let's hit the music. All right, folks, and as promised, Dorian Davis, how are you doing, sir? Welcome to Shoot the Gap.
Hey, how you doing? I'm doing good. I appreciate y'all for having me.
So Steve Huntgardner is a really good friend of mine, and he reached out to me a couple weeks ago before you and I started talking, and he said, hey, I met this guy named Dorian Davis. You have to have him on your show. No question, nothing. And that's all he said. And that's, I was like, okay, well, if Steve gives the cosign on somebody, then they're high quality people first and foremost, and people that you want to talk to. So very happy we could work out having you on Shoot the Gap. I know, I would assume being an NFL draft prospect, your schedule is crazy busy. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I mean it's died down a little bit since my pro day was about 2 weeks ago. So right now it's really just me working out every day and stuff. So it's done died down a little.
I mean, I can't even begin to comprehend just, you put, all these years of playing football from when you were a kid to being a collegiate athlete to now. It's like, it kind of feels like, everything has been leading to this moment. I mean, how are you, as we sit here and speak right now, how do you deal with just the pressure? Do you not feel pressure? Like, what is your thought process here?
As far as pressure, like from outside people, I don't really feel pressure from outside people. I just trust God. Um, Now sometimes I do get in my own head, like man, it's like it's been a long time coming, like to get to this point, and it gets a little scary to think like, all right, what's next? Like, what are we doing? But I've been really really big on trying to trust God through this process, so I haven't really been feeling too much pressure. I've been pretty good.
Very nice. Well, before we get to the future, let's go back to the past and talk a little bit about your past. You played 1 year at Western Carolina, 1 year at Southern Illinois, 2 years for the Towson Tigers, where you had in 2023 a career high per ESPN stats and info, 70 total tackles. You led all the Tigers in solo tackles that year, 2 interceptions. And then this past year, you went to Austin P. You graduated with a degree in sports management, loved it, and you're currently pursuing your master's degree. What's your master's in?
Us communications, media management.
Very nice. Are you thinking that one day that's where you want to go? You want to go down the sports entertainment route, whether it's being a professional player or being somebody who's doing the media aspect of it?
Yes, sir. It is. That is something that I really want to do.
What was really cool to find out was that you actually have several family members who actually played in the National Football League. Talking about linebacker Brandon Spikes, who played for the Patriots, who played for the Bills. Talking about wide receiver Sidney Rice, played for the Vikings and the Seahawks. Sidney Rice, JT, you remember 2009. I mean, it was basically the Brett Favre comes to Minnesota show, and he's like, I'm going to lock on to somebody. Who it is? Sidney Rice I'm locking on to. Had like 1,300 plus yards. Like that was an amazing season. Then we got defensive back Tony Scott for the New York Jets. Like, man, like, do you talk to them often during this process? Like, how does their experience help you, or has it helped you or shaped you in any way or form?
Honestly, I haven't really talked to them through this process. I've really been trying to focus on like writing my own story and not really trying to peek it. Like I know like if it came down to it, like I could hit up one of those guys and like they'll really like mentor me and like help me through the process. But I've really been trying to just trust my own process and write my own story with that one.
Very nice. So before we get into more of your background and ask you some questions here and kind of get into who Dorian Davis is as a person as well as from a football player. Folks, if you're watching us here on YouTube, please remember to hit that notification bell and that subscribe button so you're notified when Fantasy and Frames puts out all of their fantastic fantasy football content here to help you have fun playing fantasy and more importantly to help you win playing fantasy. And with that, let's get into some Q&A. JT, you got any questions you want to start us off with here for Dorian?
Yeah, just as someone who went to multiple colleges myself, I went to a lot of places. Just give a little bit of the story about kind of how you ended up where you ended up in the different places with the the NIL and the transfer rules changing here the last couple of years, and allowing you, for whatever reason, playing time or a better situation, being able to move around some different schools. Kind of talk about your journey there through college. I saw you went to Western, then Southern Illinois, very close. It's a couple hours south of me. I had a ton of friends went to Southern. I had a couple buddies play football at Southern. So, before you kind of finish off at Austin P, kind of talk about your journey through college, what it was like making those decisions, picking schools, and kind of then figuring out, hey, I need to transfer, go somewhere else, to where you got to where you are today with your final season at Austin P.
All right, so started off at Western. My first year at Western, I had to sit out because I signed originally with James Madison, but all the coaches left, so I got out of that one, and I went to Western. So I had to sit out my freshman year. Then my sophomore year, or what should have been my sophomore year, COVID happened. So it's cold. So we didn't play that year either. So I didn't get my first season in until spring of 2021 with Western. So I played that COVID year. I got freshman all conference, freshman all American. So I had a coach at Western. He coached at JMU and coached at Western. So he offered me at JMU, then he offered me at Western, and I went to play for him. And I was a corner, like strictly a cornerback. And he moved me to safety my that spring season at Western, and then he ended up leaving and going to ECU. So when he went to ECU, I was like really bummed out. But I had a good year at safety and everything. So when I originally entered the portal, it was to go try to play for him again. And because he was at ECU with all of my JMU coaches that I had committed to, so he was with it was all of those guys, and they did end up giving me the offer, but I didn't feel like the situation was best at the time at that point in my career. So I chose Southern Illinois, and Southern Illinois, I love the school. Like it was a great place. I learned a lot, man. My coach, his name's Jason Petrino. Probably he's one of the smartest coaches I've ever had. He taught me a whole bunch. But it was just the situation there. It was I came from being a freshman All American to all right now I'm barely playing like 10 snaps a game. We ended up making the playoffs that year, and I remember I forced the fumble to help us win the playoff game.
That's
And
right.
so like I thought it would be like okay. So I was like all right, it was a good year. So I'm gonna wait my turn, whatever. And that spring, we ended up bringing in like more older guys because he told me the year before he was like, "Man, you're a great ball player." He was like, "We just gotta get you to practice harder." And he was like, "When we got guys that's older than you in front of you that's paid their dues, so like just wait your turn." I was like, "All right, that's fine." And then that spring, he brought in some more older guys, and I found myself okay. Soon as spring ball started, I was second string again.
Right.
I
You saw,
wasn't really, huh?
yeah. You saw where
Yeah.
the wind was blowing there.
Yeah, so I was like, yeah, nah. So then that's when I ended up, because whenever I chose SIU, Towson had offered me, but whenever I entered the portal leaving SIU, Towson offered me again. So then at that point, I wasn't even really looking like any other school. I had some other offers, but I was like, nah. They took a chance on me the first time, and they still want me. So I said I'm gonna give them a shot. And Towson, man, those are two of the best years of my life. I loved it there. Great. I had my best season I've had there. It was it was really good. My first year was we went like 6-5. My second year, we got a whole new coaching staff and they turned the program around. Like they changed like everything, the whole culture, everything, and I love those guys. And then I just felt like I entered the portal because originally I was gonna go FBS. Like when I entered the portal that year, after because I had a really good year, I was gonna go FBS for my last year. But then my coach that I told y'all at Western, the coach that I had, he ended up going to Austin P.
Ah, okay.
So then he was like, "Hey man," he hit me up. He was like, "Would you want to come with me?" And I told him, of course, like he helped me become an All-American. Like, of course, I want to play for you. So then that's how I ended up at Austin P.
That's fantastic. Yeah, full circle there for you. Do you feel like that, just obviously the COVID years screwed with so many guys' careers and just kind of threw people off. Do you feel like just kind of building through your college career, having to have so many different coaching staffs, try different schools, do you feel like that kind of helped you prepare for like what could possibly come here with the NFL and going through all the tough times that's kind of set you up for hopefully some success here moving forward?
But yeah, I feel like it definitely has helped me, and I feel like on the next level to help me, like especially when it comes to understanding a new defense or like multiple defenses, because I played in multiple different defenses. Like this past the year, the defense I played in with my defensive coordinator Austin P. That one was, man, we ran a 3-3-5, a 3-4, a 4-2-5. So we did everything. Like he really helped me grow my game. And it's like I feel like that'll set me up best for the next level because I won't really have a problem learning a new defense.
You basically lived in the secondary, is what you're saying this past
Oh
year. Just
yes, sir. Lived in it. Like I had never got to play nickel at all until this past year, and when I played it, I excelled. Like my first play ever playing nickel, I got a sack the first play of the game. Like so, it was like yeah, that was.
So you bring up a good point. You played nickel this past year, but you've been primarily safety for the most part of your career, right?
Mhm.
Uh, now, having played safety, did you play closer to the line of scrimmage, or were you playing more in coverage at the safety
Uh,
position?
my first year at Western, I was a boundary safety, so I was closer to the line of scrimmage. I had like A gap, C gap. Then playing at SIU in Towson. Well, my first year at Towson, I played corner, but the second year I was a field safety, so I was all coverage. Like, cause we were a base cover zero, cover one team, so I played all coverage. So
That,
I've done both.
so the reason I ask is because so for IDP fantasy football, when we look at the value of the defensive back position, JT and I are pretty big fans of defensive backs. They for fantasy football purposes, you may find out that the linebackers are pretty popular, the defensive linemen, the edge rushers are pretty popular, but defensive backs don't get enough respect. And we said, what? Screw that. Defensive backs are awesome. They can help you win fantasy titles. And one of the things that we really look for when we're looking at defensive backs are those that kind of are those boundary safeties that creep up to the line of scrimmage. And so you mentioned your 2 years playing at Towson, like your career year, 70 total tackles. Like, what was that like for you that season? That just seems like that was such a magical season for you, like culminating all your stops, all the lessons learned, all the coaching, and then out of nowhere, boom, 70 total tackles, 2 interceptions. You led the team in solo tackles. I mean, you were playing like a man possessed that year.
Oh yeah, man. It's just like I'm a high energy guy. I like to fly around to the ball. So even though I'm in man coverage, ball goes the other way. I just run to the ball. Like our that the culture, like those coaches, the head coach Pete Shinning, man, he makes you want to play for him. Like he you want to do anything you can for him. So that year was a fun year. We had fun off the field, a lot of fun off the field with him, and he really took care of us. And it just made you want to do as best as you could on the field for him.
I was going to say, talk a little bit about off-season process here. You talked about pro day earlier a couple weeks ago. You went to the pro day at Tennessee, correct?
Uh-huh.
Had a pretty good performance. Nice vertical jump, nice broad jump. Kind of talk about preparing for that, and then what it was like to be at the pro day, just in front of the scouts and with a bunch of other players also trying to live their dream and make the NFL.
Oh yeah, preparing for it, man. It was a challenge, man. It was a challenge. My agent sent me up to New Jersey. I was in Jersey for a while there, and then I finished off my training back home in North Carolina. Um, it's a tough process, man. Working out every day. And honestly, I had this past season. I only played 6 games because I pulled my hamstring in the second game against SIU actually. So I pulled my hamstring in the second game. Uh, so and it messed with me the whole year, and I didn't get my hamstring like back to where I could even like try to explode until February. So the whole first half of me training, I wasn't even healthy, so I couldn't even really. It was a lot of stuff that I couldn't do, and I felt like I was falling behind. I felt like I wasn't gonna be ready. It was scary, but and at that time, I was like, it was really like a low point in my life. Like I really like it's because it's already the uncertainty of like the next level. And then it's like, dang man, I'm hurt, and the biggest day of my life is coming up, and it's like, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing? I feel like I'm behind. Like, I feel like everybody's doing this, everybody doing that. But that's when I really had to lean to God and really, really trust Him and pray and read my Bible all the time. And like, so yeah, just that grind in itself is different than any other grind you ever went through. Like, as far as like summer workouts, spring workouts, like those are like, okay, you know, all right, I still got spring ball in March, so this is gonna slow down. Or I still got the season coming, so like, and it's right now, in those 2 months, it's like you're working for what, maybe 2-3 hours. Like you're doing all that for one day that's 2 or 3 hours long. So
Right.
it's a
Yeah,
different
is
grind.
it kind of crazy to, used to, during the season you're working out, but you also have practice, you're putting on the pads. Is it just a totally different feeling to go out there where you're literally just doing workouts, you're just doing drills to try to, hone your skills on those specific things the NFL is going to train you on? It's got to be a little weird as a football player going like, it's so strange. I'm not playing football. Like I'm doing
Yes.
football things, but I'm not actually putting on the pads and playing football.
Yes, man. I'm not gonna. It's very weird. It's almost like you get a dislike for it because you're like, man, I just wanna put the pads on to play football. Like I know I'm a good football player. I want to show you that I can play football. Forget these drills. Forget this. Forget that. Like, but it's something that you got to do, and it's a process. It is a
So,
process.
to speak on that, one of the things, and I guess this occurs in real football scouting and as well as in fantasy football evaluations when we're looking at players and seeing who could be a good player for fantasy down the road. Obviously, landing spot determines a lot of that. But whether it's pro days or combines or whatever, a lot of stock is taken into a lot of these metrics like 40 time and broad jumps and so on and so forth like that. And then it almost gets to the point where it's kind of like, all right, enough already. I've shown you on the field what I can do as a prospect, and maybe you can speak to some of your fellow prospects that that are also going through similar things with you. Do you kind of have to constantly remind yourself, like if you don't have like a great day running a particular time or something like that, or jumping a particular height or so on and so forth, like you have to like give yourself like a pep talk and saying, screw that. Look what I did on the field. I know I can do this. I've shown that I can do this. I'm not going to let these numbers get into my head too much. Is that something you got to work on, or do you
That's
feel like
def-
it's common?
No, that's definitely common. It actually happened with me because, like I said, man, I didn't really get my hamstring right until February. But
Yeah.
even then, when I was training, I was hitting straight like 4.49s, 4.5s, like laser time. But then it's like pro day, I did all those jumps. I jumped like I was at the top of the combine in both of my jumps, everything, and then do the 40, and I didn't hit the 40 that I had been hitting for the last month. So I got in my head really really bad. Like I was like, man, like is this it? Like because I didn't run the time, and it's like then I get to thinking like I said, man, I didn't run this time, but in the game, like in the actual football game with however much 12, 15 pounds of football gear on, I ran 21.4 miles per hour. So it's no way like I am fast. Like I am like, yeah, you really do have to like you have to think like, man, like look at what you did, like look at what you do on the field, like that's real. What you just said, that's real. That's definitely common.
I mean, it's almost like, and again, I do not know, so I'm asking you for this advice here. Is like, as much as you have all these people supporting you, whether it's former players, coaches, family, and so forth, it seems like the life of an NFL draft prospect is a lot of time spent in your head, just trying to keep the right
Yes.
mentality going 24/7. Is that a fair assessment?
Very fair assessment. It's that's what it is. Like it's like yeah, you got support, you got this, you got that, but at the end of the day, you're always gonna be like you're always gonna go back and be in your own mind. Like you always gonna have that time. Like I kid you not, for like those 2 months, man, I did not sleep good. Like leading up to I was not sleeping good. Like it's like I would be up all night just overthinking everything, like thinking about everything that could happen, like what I feel like isn't happening fast enough, or like it
Right.
was just yeah, that's in your head most of the time, always.
Yeah,
So
it's got to be a stressful process, just going through this thing, thinking about these things. We talk about it all the time, watching film, watching guys tape. We'll see a guy maybe not run a great 40 time, and then we're like, he plays a lot faster than that. I think
Uh,
sometimes, we get in these metrics, especially as like, NFL scouts or evaluators or people that play fantasy and are looking at these guys, looking at draft guys. And every day is not the same day, right? So it's like you could run this time this day, but the next day maybe something just doesn't click and you don't run the exact same time. So I always tell people, like, look at the tape. Like if the numbers seem a little off from what you think that guy is, trust the tape, trust what they've done. Because I mean, if your 40 time, like you said, wasn't as great, wasn't what you've been running, but you put up elite jumping stats. I mean, you were over 40 on the vert, which was, I think it was top 2 for safeties, correct? And then you were like over 10, was it 10-10 in the brawn, somewhere around there? I mean, that's, we talk about it all the time. Anything over 10 is fantastic. You start getting much over that, it's absolutely phenomenal. Talk real quick to me, just the fact that you played in different styles. You talked about a little bit starting to learn, different systems because you had to kind of jump around a little bit. Do you think the fact that you played corner, safety, and now nickel is going to be one of those things that you and your agent can kind of sell to NFL teams? Like, look at the fact that this guy has played a little bit of everything, and look, he's been good anywhere you want him. He'll do anything you want. Do you think that is something that's a positive for you?
I definitely think that's a positive for me. My agent's been selling it. He's been selling it since we met, man. So it's like I definitely feel like that's something that that'll be a positive for me because it's like, all right, it's just giving me avenues to stay on the field or for teams to keep me because okay, well, we got this one guy because NFL is a numbers game, and so it's like somebody goes down, we got this guy, he can go here, or if this guy goes down, he can go here, it's nickel, or if a corner goes down, he can go play corner. So it's just like, yeah, I feel like that's something that'll really help me.
So let me ask you a question here. Over the course of your collegiate career, and then growing up and playing football when you were a kid and whatnot, is there somebody that, whether it was a coach or a player, college player or a professional player you saw on TV or something, is there anybody that you would consider to be your best or biggest role model that you've had this entire time, or has it changed from spot to spot, or in terms of college to college, or what would you say? Who would
Uh,
you say is this role model?
my biggest role model, man. And he didn't even play football past high school. It was my big brother. My big brother. That is my biggest role model. He's done everything for me since as long as I can remember. Like he never, like, no matter what he did, he never let me steer off the wrong path, like off the right path. He always made sure I stayed doing what I was gonna do, and he kept the confidence in me. Like when I was at Southern Illinois, I really didn't, like, I had got to the point where I wanted to quit football. Like I almost gave up my dream, and he just made sure I stayed at it. And he did whatever he needed to do to make sure that I stayed focused on what I needed to be focused on.
That I love hearing everything you're saying tonight, because you know a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that football players are just made of, well, obviously they're big, they're strong, they're in shape, you all are super athletic, but nobody really gets into like the mindset of football players, on the grand stage. Like, you don't see ESPN doing a series of like, what does so and so, what is Dorian thinking, like what's his thought process, what's his, and diving into that aspect of like, how football isn't just physical. There's a lot of mental that goes into it. Well, and just like with the physical, you got to stay balanced and be able to keep pushing yourself. I feel like from what we're learning tonight, it goes right with the mentality. You mentioned that your Christianity plays a huge role into your life, so I'm assuming that spirituality also plays a big role in helping with that mentality. You speak a little bit to how just like your faith and your faith and religion has helped you in terms of just navigating these waters, so to speak.
Yeah, man. My dad, he's always instilled God. Like he's always instilled God in everything, and it's like I didn't really understand it when I was little, but the older I started to get, and the more like stuff started happening that was out of my control, I had to realize, like, man, maybe this isn't going right because you haven't been consistent in your word like you should, or maybe this isn't going right because you haven't been trusting God, like you're worrying too much instead of leaning on God and trusting God, and maybe that's why your mental is so bad because you're worrying too much. And it's really true that like when you give things to God and you truly have faith and truly trust God and believe like that whatever His outcome is what's best for you, it'll help ease everything.
No, that is some powerful stuff right there. And again, like a lot of people, these are things, these are topics that I think should be more mainstream. These are things that people believe in. Whether you're watching on night 1 or night 2 or whatever it is of the NFL draft, and people get interviewed as soon as they're drafted. What is the number one thing a lot of people say is their faith in God, and how that comes into a huge play into huge part into how they've been able to find success. And so whether it's your faith, your spirituality, or just your mentality, I mean, there's a lot of aspects, a lot of facets to being a football player that, I think people watching and people who are going to be listening to this show are going to come away thinking, you know what, I need to give these guys a lot more respect for not just what they do on the field, but what they do with, themselves when there's nobody else around, when there are no reporters, there's no lights, there's no camera, there's, just them. And just keeping your mind right during this entire process. I mean, kudos to you, man, for everything that you guys, for everything you do, and for what what you're willing to do to put your bodies on the line to really enjoy playing this game that we were all fans of. You know what I mean? Football is great. I I don't know where a lot of my free time would be if I didn't have football or football to talk about or people to analyze and break down. So to hear your perspectives on things is truly inspiring, man. You're doing a lot of great work, and I think you should be very proud of yourself, if not already. Just with everything you've been doing. I would like to ask a question here. If you could say, "Hi, I'm Dorian Davis, and I model my game after insert blank from the NFL," whether it's an active player or somebody who's not active anymore, who would you say that player would be? And you could have multiple answers if you want.
I would say like a mix between Minka Fitzpatrick and Buda Baker. I like Buda Baker, his effort. He's fearless. Like he's always, you always see him around the football, and that's something I take pride in, always being around the football. And then Minka Fitzpatrick, man, he's just a playmaker. I love, like he's a playmaker. I love forced fumbles. I love interceptions. I love it all. And that's what Minka brings to the game.
As a Steelers fan, I love to hear that. I love Minka. Minka's one of my favorite players. Love that. Do you have a favorite NFL team? Is there somebody you follow, or were you a college guy? I know some guys are like, I follow this team hardcore, and other people are like, man, I just played. I wasn't like really following anything outside of just me playing. How about you? Are you a big NFL fan? Is there a team you liked as a kid, or a team you follow now?
Oh yeah, I grew up an Eagles fan, so yeah, I grew up an Eagles fan. So we just won that Super Bowl. That's always been my favorite team. Like I was a running back when I was little, so I used to have like a Shady McCoy jersey. I love Shady.
Nice.
That's my favorite.
See,
that's fantastic.
We were off to such a great start, Dorian. And then
Jorge's a Washington Commanders fan, so that's why he's a little salty. It's not your fault. He's a
little salty. Did you watch that NFC Championship? There's a lot to be salty about. Will Shipley busts a 49-yard run and gets a touchdown in the fourth quarter. Yeah, you're going to be a little bit salty, which he was a great at Clemson, so no disrespect. Man, all in all, if you could talk to anybody else who's going through the draft process, pre-draft process, I should say, whether it's so let me start. Let's say somebody's watching this a year from now, or somebody's listening to the show a year from now, and they're like, "Hey, Dorian, what am I hoping to get out of this show?" And that would be advice you would give them during their process, during getting ready for the draft. Like, what advice would you give to somebody else?
Advice I'll give is first, trust God in everything you do, man. Lean on God, and don't compare yourself to others. Like comparison is a thief of joy. Like, yes, you see somebody, they might be a bigger name, or they might be getting these interviews, or people might be talking about them, saying this, saying that. Man, just trust the work you put in, that your whole life, man. Trust your film, and just grind your butt off, and just lean on God, and then everything gonna work itself out.
Just amazing stuff. And I kind of want to touch on one thing here. The NFL draft, obviously in Green Bay this year. What is your thought process? Is it draft or bust, or is it draft or I'm going to keep working at it and I'm going to get picked up if I don't get drafted? You're like, how do you handle that thought process of just like, I worked really hard to get to some place and this potentially might not work out the way I envisioned it, but may potentially could work out down the road. Like, how do you keep those emotions in check?
I keep them in check. Honestly, it's really hard to keep in check. It's really hard to keep in check. But draft a bust, nah, it's not that. I plan on playing the game of football for a long time, and I feel like I still got a lot of game left in me. So I feel like whatever does happen, I'm just trusting God with it, and whatever comes with it. Like if it's a undrafted free agent or a rookie minicamp invite or whatever it is, as long as I get that opportunity to put that helmet on, they gonna know who I am. That's the way I feel about it. So it's not really draft or bust for me.
Yeah, have you talked about that with your agent? You know, a lot of the agents, they've had a little more experience. They kind of know what you look for if those things happen. With the way the NFL's kind of switched over the years and adjusted lineups, they can invite more guys that can't, more undrafted free agents. Guys can get on taxi squads kind of things where you can play on the practice squad. You know, the rise of, the XFL last couple of years, Canadian Football League. It does seem like there's more avenues for guys to kind of, if they don't get that initial hit, to kind of work their way up. Is that kind of what he's told you? Like, hey, shoot for the stars. Like, let's hope we get drafted at a certain point in the draft, or maybe by this team or that team. But like, hey, don't get discouraged if we don't go where we want to go, because we're going to figure out something. We're going to get options.
Honestly, the way I give it, talking with my agent, he's more confident in me. Like he feels like he's been telling me, like when I was down and stuff, he's telling me like, yeah, man, it's like it's real teams that got you on their board. Like they really think you have a shot. He was like the CFL, the UFL. He was like, those are great options, but those are options that we'll think about down the road. He was like, right now you still got a chance. And he was like, we just going trust God with that. Like that's all it is.
As somebody, so I'm a big pro wrestling junkie, and I don't know if you are or not, or have ever watched WWF.
I used to love wrestling.
I still right here. I got my action figures from the '90s right here. I pulled them out of mothballs. Anyhow, so now that I'm done being a geek for the moment, one of my favorite wrestlers, Triple H, he had a promo on Monday Night Raw. I want to say it was about 2013, 2014. And somebody asked him, hey, what's your plan B? And he said, there is no plan B. There's only plan A. That to me just speaks to what you just said there about what your agent's all about. And is that the mentality that you're just like, that's it. There is no plan B. I'm focusing on plan A because if I focus on plan B, then I'm distracting myself from plan A. Is that pretty comparable to what you're going through?
Yeah, I heard years ago, I heard Cam Newton and his dad. It was in an interview, and he said, "Ain't no plan B. Plan B is to make plan A work." So that's I've been living by that ever since. I heard that.
Well, speaking of plan A, let's talk about plan A, and that is playing fantasy football a plan A activity for you?
The real important questions here, Dorian, is do you like fantasy football and do you play a ton of it like we do?
So I'm gonna give y'all a story, man. It was the year that RG3 and Andrew Luck and everybody got drafted.
Yeah, 12. Yep.
I was young. I tried to play fantasy, and I was really into college football. So like I was in some fantasy league. I don't even know who I was in the fantasy league with. But they literally would let me get all the rookies I thought was good. I had all of them. Like I had Andrew Luck, I had RG3, I had Trent Richardson, I had a lot of other guys, and I'm like, golly, no way they just let me get all of these dudes. I had the worst season ever. And ever since then, I never played again. Ever since that day, I never played again.
Oh, that early bird. I've been in there. We and Jorge play a lot of Dynasty where you keep your guys forever. And then when I do redraft leagues, I always fall in that. I love the rookies and I take all the rookies. And then my team's terrible because I'm like, I love these guys. I want them, but like, I don't give time. That's funny. I've heard stories like that before.
Yeah.
JT and I, we, obviously we love IDP fantasy football or individual defensive player fantasy football. So in a lot of my dynasty leagues, we were able to have people on our bench and taxi squads and so on and so forth. you make it to the NFL, man, you're on my roster. I'm putting some faith into Dorian Davis here because I really believe in, not just what you've been able to do on the field, but it's your strength in your mind and off the field that really is an inspiring thing that I think people should pay attention to. And I can't wait to have you on my roster, man. The second you sign somewhere, add Dorian Davis to my roster right there. So here's the thing. If it's been since 2012, since the last time apparently you played fantasy football, and you could obviously, I'm putting you on the spot right now. You could either say yes or no or maybe. I'll give you the out with maybe. That's always a good safe thing to say. You think we could possibly get you in an IDP league where it's just defensive players this year playing fantasy football?
Possibly, I give you a strong maybe. A strong maybe.
I like that. That's fair. It's better than like a week maybe. So
I love defense. I love defense, and honestly, with this one and the one with Steve, I never knew what IDP was until now. So it's like it sounds interesting. I would definitely.
Yeah, we'll get Steve in it too. We'll get a bunch of people. Absolutely. We would love to and who better than a football player to know which football players to really go after, because you all obviously study yourselves and study the game way more than anybody else, so it would make a ton of sense. So, okay, fantastic. So basically what that means is a strong maybe. I'm going to take that as a yes, and then the rest is history. So that's good.
Jorge, then you're going to have to fight it out against Dorian in the draft himself. You're going to try to draft him before he drafts himself. We're going to be in a 3-way fight to see who gets him on our fantasy team. So.
And the thing is like Dorian's going to have a great day on the field. He's going to have 5 pass deflections and 2 interceptions, maybe 8 solo tackles. And I'm going to have him on my starting roster. And then for fantasy, I'm going to beat Dorian that week because I'm keeping him in fantasy. Just kidding. Maybe we could work out a trade where you can have your own stuff for fantasy purposes.
Yeah, man.
That would honestly, I have to think that would be wild to own myself in a fantasy league. That would be so weird. That'd be so strange. It would be cool, but it was so weird.
Would you be conflicted? It's championship week for fantasy, and somebody else is playing with you on their roster, and it's like, man, week 17. Oh, I made this interception, but I feel bad about it. Is that a thought that put into your head?
No, Jorge. Real life over fantasy, baby. Real life over fantasy.
Always.
I know we shouldn't say that in a fantasy football show, but that's true. It's
that is for darn sure. And speaking of real life, seriously, sincerely, thank you very much for coming on our show tonight. We know time is obviously a precious thing, and we really appreciate you spending your time with us here on Shoot the Gap. Before we get out of here, though, anything you either want to plug or talk about or give a shout out to, or just advice in general you want to give people out there?
Really nothing that I really want to give people, man. I just want to, for those who do believe in God, I just want everybody to just really, really have faith in God in everything that you do. That's something I've really been real big on. And yeah, if you remember me for anything, just remember me for that. I don't even care about if you remember me from football. Just remember me for that.
That is such power.
Hey, we're gonna be rooting for you, man. Appreciate it. I have Colts season tickets. I want you to get drafted by the Colts, baby. I'm gonna come out. I want to come out and see you at training camp. I take my son and my girlfriend and her daughter to training camp every year. That's what I want. This is my new draft. Is I want to see Dorian Davis on the Indianapolis Colts, baby. We need some secondary help. We need some secondary help in Indy. Let's make it happen. Chris Ballard, if you're out there listening, Chris Ballard, draft Dorian Davis. Do it.
And Dorian's very versatile, so he could play wherever you want him to play.
We need him all over the place. We need safety, corner, nickel. He'd be perfect fit for the Colts.
All right. Thanks very much, Dorian, for joining us. And for everybody else out there, thank you very much for watching this episode of Shoot the Gap. Again, remember, follow us on all our socials, whether it's Facebook, Twitter /X, Blue Sky, TikTok, Instagram. Listen to the podcast, the Shoot the Gap podcast on Apple and Spotify. If you're over on our YouTube channel, please give us a subscribe and like. Hit that notification bell so that way you're notified when Fantasy and Frames puts on all of our fantastic fantasy football content to help you have fun playing fantasy and to have success playing fantasy. But tonight was a special night, and Dorian, we really do appreciate you joining us tonight. So thank you very much. So for JT, I'm Jorge. Fourth and Frames will be next, where they're going to be talking about NFL coaching changes and how that's going to impact your favorite fantasy football stars in 2025 and beyond. So sit tight. Again, Dorian, best of luck to you, and we'll be rooting for you, man.
Yes, sir. Thank you, guys.
All right. Everybody else, we'll see you next week on Shoot the Gap. Have a great night.